For months she treated him with kindness, never hearing a single word, but when the silent patient finally spoke, what he confessed shook her world and rewrote her destiny. Clara Montrose, a 31-year-old nurse with auburn curls always tied in a bun, ivory skin and soft hazel eyes, stepped into the Holland Bay Rehabilitation Center as dawn painted the sky. She wore pale blue scrubs and white sneakers, her usual calm aura hiding a heart still cracked from a personal tragedy. Years ago, her brother had died from an untreated seizure while waiting for help in an overcrowded ER. That loss made her vow to never let another patient feel unseen. Her favorite place in the world was the ocean just behind the center, where she'd sit during lunch breaks and watch the tide breathe in and out. It was here that she first met Aiden, 38 years old, olive skin dulled by grief, wavy black hair now overgrown and deep-set blue eyes that held storm clouds. He hadn't spoken since he arrived, not a single word. The record said he lost his wife and daughter in a house fire. He blamed himself. The doctors called it selective mutism, but Clara sensed it was something deeper, a punishment he believed he deserved. Each day she entered his room with a gentle good morning, offering updates, telling stories, reading aloud, humming lullabies, pretending he was listening. And somewhere inside, she began to hope that he was. When Aiden Voss first arrived at the Holland Bay Rehabilitation Center, the staff whispered about him in hushed tones. A man in his late 30s, once a renowned architect, now reduced to silence and solitude. He had been found unconscious near the remains of his burned-down estate. The fire that took his wife and 5-year-old daughter had left no physical scars on him, but the emotional devastation was written all over his face. Clara remembered the first time she entered his room. He didn't look at her. He didn't flinch. He simply stared through the window, his eyes locked on a world no one else could see. His file was thick with failed attempts at therapy. He refused to eat unless someone left the food and walked away. He didn't write, he didn't draw, he didn't speak. Yet something about him stirred Clara's instincts. She recognized the weight of guilt. It was different from sadness. It hollowed a person out, made them hide from kindness. So she treated him not like a case but like a person. She talked to him as if he could answer. She asked about his favorite music. She told him about the birds outside his window. She even teased him about the way his eyebrows furrowed when she fluffed his pillow, and though he never moved, she kept talking. Weeks passed. Clara's morning routine revolved around Aiden. She arrived early to ensure she had extra minutes in his room. She'd grown fond of the silence between them. It became a space where her voice didn't need answers. She shared old family stories, confided about the tragedy of losing her brother Theo, and even described how she had once wanted to be a travel writer before switching to nursing. "I think you would have liked Theo," she once said, folding a fresh blanket over Aiden's motionless legs. "He was always fixing things, like your kind of architect, but with cars and radios instead." She paused and looked at him. No movement, no blink. "Not that you're listening," she whispered, more to herself than to him. But deep down she clung to a stubborn hope. In caring for Aiden, she was caring for that part of herself that still mourned Theo. She believed in second chances, and even though Aiden's silence persisted, she felt a strange comfort in the one-sided companionship they shared. And once, just once, she thought she saw it, a twitch at the corner of his mouth when she mentioned ice cream sundaes with cherry toppings. One rainy morning, Clara entered Aiden's room with her usual cheerful tone, only to freeze in place. On the bedside table lay a sheet of paper, a simple sketch done in pencil. It was a lighthouse on a cliff, waves crashing below it. Her lighthouse, the one she always described from her hometown stories, the one where she and Theo used to play as kids. She picked up the drawing slowly, heart thudding. "Did you draw this?" No reply. Aiden stared ahead, but his eyes seemed less foggy. From that day on, the sketches appeared regularly. Quiet, beautiful, and always rooted in her stories. A swing set under a maple tree. A red bicycle beside a creek. Her old golden retriever, Max. Each one was accurate down to the smallest detail, even though she had never shown him pictures. He was listening. Clara began leaving colored pencils and sketch pads on his table. She encouraged him without pushing. "These are amazing, Aiden. You have a gift." Still no words, but now she knew he was there. With every sketch, Aiden revealed more of himself. The rigid lines of his earlier drawings softened. His hand had a confident grace to it. Once, Clara found a drawing of a little girl on a swing, her long curls blowing in the wind, a man sitting nearby, arms outstretched. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She knew instantly that the child was his daughter. She didn't ask questions. She simply framed the drawing and hung it beside his bed. "She's beautiful," Clara said softly. "Thank you for sharing her with me." Aiden's eyes flicked to the drawing for a fleeting moment. Clara smiled. That glance was the first response she'd ever seen. He wasn't just present, he was feeling. And so their bond grew in quiet ways. He became more alert when she entered the room. He even adjusted his blanket when she teased him about being lazy. No words yet. But his silence was no longer empty, it was thoughtful, deliberate, alive. Clara, too, changed. She felt lighter. Talking to him made her grief easier to bear. It was as if sharing her pain had helped both of them carry it. Two people, two shattered hearts, healing in tandem, without a single word spoken. Late one evening, Clara sat by Aidan's bed reading aloud from a book of poetry. She had made it a habit to end each shift by reading him a few verses, her voice calm and melodic. That night, as she closed the book, she said softly, "If you ever want to talk, I'll always listen, Aidan." No matter what it is, she left the room without expecting a response, her words drifting into the still air like a promise. The next morning, Clara received a letter from administration. She was being transferred to the surgical recovery unit across the city in 2 weeks. Budget constraints, staff reshuffling, no exceptions. Her heart sank. She had spent months investing her soul into Aidan's care, and now she had to walk away. That night she sat at her desk and poured everything she couldn't say into a notebook. Page after page of stories, memories, hopes, and encouragement, her own voice in ink. She left the notebook beside Aidan's sketchpad with a note on the cover, "For when you're ready," and then she walked away, unsure if he'd ever open it. The room felt hollow after Clara left. The staff still cared for Aidan, but the warmth was missing. Days passed, then weeks, no sketches, no movement. But on the 7th night, Aidan opened the notebook. He turned the pages slowly, scanning Clara's handwriting. Her stories unfolded like old letters from a best friend. Tales of childhood dreams, fears, hospital pranks, family recipes, and sorrow. In her absence, her words became his lifeline. He lingered over the story of her brother, the way his life had ended and how helpless she had felt. Aidan saw himself in her pain, and for the first time in years he cried. Tears slipped silently down his face, soaking into the page about a lost birthday cake and a missing gift, her final memory with Theo. That night he reached for his sketchpad again. He didn't draw her lighthouse. He drew Clara, sitting by his bed, book in hand, head tilted in thought. And he wrote one word beneath it: stay. The silence began to crack. Every night Aidan reread the notebook. He memorized the curve of her letters, the rhythm of her stories. Her voice echoed in his mind as clearly as if she were beside him. One evening he reached for a pen, intending to write something, anything. But his hand trembled violently. The guilt returned like a wave. He had left his daughter upstairs that night, asleep while he fixed something in the basement. A faulty wire, a spark. By the time he reached her, the flames had already devoured the stairs. He'd heard her scream his name. That sound had never left him. Aidan collapsed to the floor, hands shaking, breath ragged. A nurse rushed in, but he refused help. He curled into himself, whispering the words in his head, unable to speak aloud. "I'm sorry," he tried again. But nothing came out. Still, something inside him had changed. The pain was rising to the surface and he couldn't run from it anymore. Clara was unpacking boxes in her new unit when she got the call. "Aidan asked for you," her former supervisor said. Her heart nearly stopped. He spoke just one word, but it was your name, without hesitation. Clara drove back to Holland Bay that evening, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. The sky was painted with streaks of twilight, the same soft pink and gold she used to describe to Aidan. When she entered his room, she found him sitting upright in bed, sketchpad on his lap, eyes locked on the door as if he'd been waiting. "Hi, Aidan," she whispered. He opened his mouth and spoke hoarsely as if lifting a mountain. "Clara, I need to tell you something." Clara sat in the chair beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached out and gently touched his hand. "I'm listening." Aidan looked down, his voice strained but clear enough to be heard. "The fire, it was my fault." Clara didn't interrupt. "I was fixing a breaker in the basement, left the heater on upstairs. My daughter was napping, my wife was in the garden. I smelled smoke. I tried to get her. I couldn't. I failed them." He paused, swallowing his sobs. "I hear her scream every night, Clara, and I see them, standing in the fire, looking at me like I abandoned them. I should have burned too." Clara reached out and wrapped her arms around him. He stiffened at first, then broke down. For the first time his silence shattered into sobs that shook the bed. "You didn't fail them," she whispered into his shoulder. "You survived. That's not a punishment, Aidan. That's a second chance." And he clung to her like a man lost at sea finally seeing shore. After his confession, Aidan didn't stop talking. It came slowly at first, sentences that broke mid-thought, words that got stuck in his throat. But Clara sat with him through it all, patient, calm, unflinching. He told her about his daughter's favorite bedtime song, about how his wife used to bake peach cobbler every Sunday, about the guilt that had clawed at his throat for years, and Clara told him more too, about Theo, about the panic attacks she had hidden behind her calm demeanor, about how losing someone in silence made her afraid of quiet forever. Their conversations became daily rituals, more intimate than touch, more healing than medicine. Aiden's drawings grew more colorful. Clara's laughter returned. They were for the first time fully alive. Each day became a step toward something new. Aiden began participating in group sessions. Encouraged by Clara's presence, he spoke quietly, but when he did, everyone listened. His story of loss wasn't just one of tragedy, it became a testament to survival, to the silent strength of healing. Clara watched him bloom from the shadows. His posture straightened. His smile, though faint, started to appear in the mornings. He even began initiating conversation, asking about the weather, the books Clara read, her favorite season. "I always thought spring was just a metaphor," he told her one afternoon, as cherry blossoms bloomed outside the window, "but now, I think I finally understand what it means." Clara smiled. "It means you've survived your winter." They started taking walks in the garden, talking, laughing. Quiet moments stretched between them, no longer heavy but peaceful. And though neither said it aloud, something deeper stirred beneath their companionship, something unnamed, something that waited patiently to be realized. One morning, Clara arrived with a stack of pamphlets tucked under her arm. She spread them across Aiden's table, brochures about art therapy, mental health outreach, and community centers. "I've been thinking," she said, her hazel eyes lit with excitement, "what if we built something together, a place for people like us, survivors, people carrying silence? You could teach art, I could do counseling, we could help others find their voice." Aiden stared at her in wonder. "You'd want to work with me?" "I already do," she replied with a smile. "But now we can do it our way." They began planning in secret, making calls, creating proposals. Aiden's name opened doors. He had once been a celebrated architect. Clara's passion moved people. Within a few months, the dream started taking shape. A community healing center focused on creative therapy, located in a quiet lakeside town. It would be called the Lighthouse, after the drawing Aiden had once made of her memory. Their last day at Holland Bay was bittersweet. The staff gathered to wish them farewell, many with tears in their eyes. Aiden gave a short speech, thanking everyone who hadn't given up on him, especially Clara. He left behind a framed sketch for the center's hallway. A pair of hands reaching through fire, joined by a thread of light. Clara, too, felt the weight of departure. This place had changed her. She had come seeking purpose and had found a life-altering bond instead. As they packed their things, she placed the old notebook she had written for Aiden into a small wooden box. He touched it reverently. "It saved me," he said. "You saved me," Clara smiled, blinking back tears. "You were just waiting for someone to hear you." They left the building side by side, no longer nurse and patient, but equals in a story still being written. The small lakeside town of Valamir welcomed them with open arms. The air smelled of pine and mist. The building they purchased for their center had large windows and a long wraparound porch. It needed work, but Aiden's hands found purpose again in restoring it. Clara handled the paperwork, outreach, and planning. Their teamwork was effortless, their bond stronger than ever. As the building came to life, they hosted workshops for veterans, trauma survivors, and local youth. Aiden taught sketching, painting, and expression without pressure. Clara held story circles and private counseling sessions. The space buzzed with creativity and emotional release. One afternoon, a young girl who had lost her mother handed Clara a crayon drawing. "Thank you for helping my silence," she said. Clara and Aiden looked at each other, moved. That was the moment they knew they weren't just healing, they were now healers. Despite everything they had built together, neither Clara nor Aiden spoke directly about their growing feelings. But they were there, in every shared glance, in every quiet walk along the lakeshore, in the way their hands would brush and linger. At night, Clara found herself rereading the stories she had once written for him. They now felt like letters to a future she didn't know she was writing. Aiden began drawing portraits of her more often, her face smiling, her reading a book, her sitting in the sun. He captured her with a tenderness that words could never match. One evening, Clara found a new sketch waiting on her desk. It was of her and Aiden sitting side by side, older, surrounded by children, paintbrushes, and flowers. She traced the drawing with her fingertips. She knew, but she still waited for him to say the words out loud. To celebrate 6 months of the Lighthouse, Clara organized a small community gathering. Patients, volunteers, families all came to share stories, laughter, and music. Aiden spent the day overseeing the decorations, nervously adjusting details. Clara noticed his fidgeting but said nothing. He disappeared before the event began. When he returned, he was holding a simple white box and wore a clean blue dress shirt Clara had never seen before. His expression was solemn, but his eyes sparkled with certainty. As the evening came to a close, Aiden stood before the crowd, microphone in hand. "This place exists because of one person," he began, voice steady. "A woman who gave me back my life, who saw me when I couldn't see myself." Clara watched, breath caught in her chest. Aiden turned to her. "You once told me you'd always listen. And now I need to ask you something." He opened the box. Inside was a hand-drawn ring made of gold and pencil sketches, a temporary symbol. "Clara Montrose, will you keep listening to me for the rest of our lives?" Clara didn't speak at first. Her hands flew to her mouth as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Everyone around them held their breath. She stepped forward, took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger. "I've been listening since the beginning," she whispered. "And I'll never stop." Aiden smiled through tears of his own. They embraced, surrounded by applause, laughter, and joy. It was not a grand, cinematic kiss. It was a quiet, soul-deep connection between two people who had been broken by life yet found in each other the courage to rebuild. From that moment on, they were no longer healing alone. They were whole, together. Years passed. The lighthouse grew into a recognized center for emotional and creative healing. People came from cities, towns, and countries to experience the calm, the care, the magic of the space Clara and Aiden had built. They lived in a cottage near the lake where laughter was loud, dinners were warm, and silence, when it happened, was a comfortable friend, no longer an enemy. They continued to share their story, not for sympathy but to remind others that even the most broken voices could still be heard. Their love was never flashy, but it was enduring, rooted in truth, and nourished by kindness. And every night before bed, Aiden would read a page from Clara's old notebook, the one that had started it all. It had become their ritual, their reminder, that love begins when someone listens. On the 10th anniversary of the lighthouse, Clara stood on stage before a crowd of survivors, supporters, and strangers turned family. Aiden stood beside her, his hand wrapped gently around hers. She looked out and said, "This center was born from grief, but it was built on hope, and every day we honor those who couldn't speak, by listening to those who still can." Aiden added, "If you are carrying silence, please know this, you are not alone. There is life after the silence, and there is love waiting on the other side." As the audience rose in applause, a video camera panned across the room, recording the faces of the changed, the healed, and the healing. And as the screen faded to black, Clara's voice echoed, "If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who needs hope, and remember, listening can save a life."